morning. My name is Herbert Nance, and this is my personal statement. Are you my ally? Respectfully, I would ask you not to answer that for yourself until you hear or read my personal statement in full. My personally painful truth. I have directly experienced and been a victim of numerous forms of discrimination throughout my life. However, I have been racially discriminated against in every stage of my life. While that might sound unbelievable, I acknowledge 20 life-changing moments of individual, interpersonal, institutional, structural, and systemic racism in my life. Sadly, these are not all the components and moments, but I can speak to these specific examples in detail and at length, which cross my educational, personal, professional, social, and volunteer aspects of my entire life to date. From a high level, I share them now with disappointment and vulnerability. Number one, in elementary school here in San Antonio, being allowed to play with a friend only outside because his parents would not allow him to play with me inside their home. Number two, education here in middle school in San Antonio, being bullied so much on the school bus with name calling, one of which was Black F. The bus driver would yell at me and make me sit in the front so she did not have to hear it anymore. Number three, education here in middle school in San Antonio as well. Being one of a few minorities in a citywide choir and being asked by another chorister if I was on scholarship like the others. Number four, here in high school in San Antonio, being told that I should not be singing classical music and should think about singing gospel music instead. Number five, high school here in San Antonio, being told that Black people should only be Baptists and not Presbyterians. Number six, high school, but in Fort Worth, Texas, being at a high school choir camp while visiting the mall with other campers, we came back to the parking lot to find that every car had a KKK recruitment flyer on it. Number seven, here in San Antonio, being called an Uncle Tom by other kids in the neighborhood that I grew up in. Number eight, here in San Antonio, being told, you're a nice guy, but I can't date Black guys. Number nine, in college in Denton, Texas, being in a group of Black students singled out by a professor of music to model singing a Negro spiritual for the other majority white classmates because in his words, they weren't giving him the sound that he was looking for. Number 10, in Austin, being told, sorry, but I don't date Black guys. Number 11, college in Austin, being selected as an apprentice to an academy in Austria. And while there, individuals had incorporated the N-word into their vocabulary, where I also could not get served at restaurants. It was affecting me so much, I was experiencing nosebleeds and headaches daily. Ultimately, my parents told me to come home. Number 12, professional. In Austin, being called a jungle bunny by a coworker. Number 13, in Austin, being called boy by an elected official at a public governmental agency. Number 14, professional. In Austin, being called boy by a C-suite executive at a nonprofit governmental support agency. Number 15, in Los Angeles, California, being told I won't date Black guys anymore. Number 16, as a volunteer in San Diego, California, being singled out by a choral director in front of white peers to audition for Porgy from Porgy and Bess, and being asked to accompany him to a local Black high school as part of their underprivileged outreach program to assist. Number 17, as a volunteer also in San Diego, California, not being allowed to serve on one nonprofit board because there was already a Black person on it. Number 18, as a volunteer in San Diego, California, while serving on a different nonprofit board in the role of secretary, having to enter into a dialogue as to whether or not, if I shifted into the role of president of the board, if it might impact donations to the organization negatively. Number 19, as a professional in San Diego. Being pushed out of an organization after 13 years of positive reviews and only one promotion, only to find out that concurrently, the executive level had been working to promote all of my mid-management equals the subsequent pay period immediately following my separation date. And number 20, as a volunteer here in San Antonio. After working over the phone with an individual, once we met in person, they had an inappropriate immediate reaction to my race, which then they apologized for profusely. I hold a Bachelor of Arts degree in government from the University of Texas at Austin with almost 20 years business operations experience in energy, government, for-profit, creative arts, and nonprofit industries. I was so optimistic in coming back to San Antonio, where since my initial departure in 1996, there had been a shift of the demographics of the city where one minority had now become the majority. Where although the Black or African Americans are only 6.4%, it was part of the 75% citywide total average of people of color. While I have been asked if I have thought about taking down my picture on my LinkedIn profile, I have not brought myself to do it, especially because at application, I do answer the questions honestly that I am a non-Hispanic or Latino Black male. It is also part of the reason why my parents named me Herbert Nance. So when my resume crossed the hiring manager's desk, they would not be able to assume I was Black. However, after aggressively and consistently seeking full-time employment through recruiters, job boards, and agencies, what I ultimately was met with was not one job offer to gain employment in San Antonio. Why? Sincerely and reluctantly, I am a primary example of the public health crisis of racism, and that predates the COVID-19 pandemic, and why it supports the need for stronger efforts that must be made. I am grateful to organizations like the United Communities of San Antonio, or UCSA, which has a board of trailblazers who were not afraid to provide an opportunity to an African American male to be the organization's first president and CEO, albeit part-time, as we continue to cautiously navigate through COVID-19 as a nonprofit social services charitable organization. For those who have reached out to me directly or whom I am personally connected with requesting my thoughts, I express the following. A, individual education. Take an implicit association test to be provided with a self-assessment, a deep understanding of self, and to identify possible blind spots. B, individual reflection. The 4 A's. This is a tool I have personally created as an exercise. First is to acknowledge. Don't ignore the past nor the present related to human relations, and more specifically, race relations. Number 2, admit. Don't dismiss the ongoing fact that there is a real-time challenge related to equality and justice. Number 3, accept. Don't deny if in your past, deliberate actions, inadvertent decisions, or unconscious choices may have contributed to racism, bias, bigotry, and/or discrimination in our society. And number 4, action. Don't only tolerate others' personal truths. Empathize with them. Even if they happen to be contradictory to your own personal life experiences, beliefs, morals, or values. And Finally, individual statement. If you truly consider yourself to be an ally, are you interested, committed, or engaged? UCSA has been disseminating a press release titled "Be the Change for Equality and Justice." Within the statement is a three-step universal process in response to the following question: what do I do now? The press release can be found on the UCSA media webpage under press releases at www.ucofsa.org/media. We believe it provides tangible steps, action items, and a sense of unity. It is our sincere hope that this statement will be welcomed by all who receive it. We invite you to forward to all whom you believe could benefit from it. Recently, I've been participating in training sessions on dismantling racism. The facilitator was asked, "What can white people do?" He himself, as a white person with his self-professed humility and self-described limitations, stated that white people should do the following. A, lead in white spaces and listen in diverse spaces. B, build relationships with Black facilitators. And C, white people need to be committed. As a Black person, commitment may seem like enough for a white person, but that is seen as non-helpful and passing the buck by a Black person, especially now. For education, I give you two definitions of white privilege supported by recent examples with no context, just known facts. Definition 1, the implicit or systemic advantages that people who are deemed white have relative to people who are not deemed white. It is the absence of suspicion and other negative reactions that white people experience. The term is used in discussions focused on mostly hidden benefits that white people possess in a society where racism is prevalent and whiteness is considered normal, rather than on the detriments to the people who are the objects of racism. An example of this, on August 23rd, 2020 in Kenosha, Wisconsin, Jacob Blake, a Black man, was shot 7 times by police officer Rustin Shesky of the Kenosha Police Department on the front driver's side of his car, in front of his 3 Black children who were in the back seat. In the aftermath, a white child traveled from his home into that same community, walking the streets with an assault rifle with only disingenuous intentions, ending multiple lives. He then walked right past the police with his hands raised and returned to his home. Another example, the officer charged with the murder of George Floyd has now requested that the judge dismiss the charges against him, saying that it was George Floyd's alleged use of drugs that led to his death, not improper use of force. I'll be honest, while this invokes numerous feelings and emotions for me, I will simply state that this action by the officer and his legal team could also be a very real example of white privilege. Another definition of white privilege is the inherent advantages possessed by a white person on the basis of their race in a society characterized by racial inequality and injustice. To that, I give the example that happened here in San Antonio on August 25th, where Matthias Ometu, a Black man, was jogging. He was stopped by police officers on the San Antonio Police Department. The police department, per local media, stated AP1 matched the description of an alleged strangulation family violence incident addressed to officers by the victim. Officers asked AP1 for this information. AP1 refused multiple times to verbally give him his name and date of birth. A separate police officer approached and addressed a couple who recorded the encounter. The couple said he was just jogging, minding his own business. The officer said it was a lawful detention based on what the lady told us, and he matched the exact description. These recent incidents where After all, they've gained local, regional, national, and international coverage. I have to remind us all, and I hope y'all are all still with me right now, is to say their names. Trayvon Martin in Stanford, Florida in February 2012. Eric Garner in New York, New York in July 2014. Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri in August 2014. Tamir Rice in Cleveland, Ohio in November of 2014. Freddie Gray in Baltimore, Maryland in April of 2015. Clementa C. Pickney, Cynthia Marie Graham Hurd, Susie Jackson, Ethel Lee Lance, DePayne Middleton Doctor, Tywanza Sanders, Daniel L. Simmons, Sharonda Coleman Singleton, and Myra Thompson in Charleston, South Carolina in June of 2015. Sandra Bland in Waller County, Texas in July 2015. Antoine Scott in San Antonio, Texas in February 2016. Alton Sterling in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in July 2016. Philando Castile in Falcon Heights, Minnesota in July 2016. Stephon Clark in Sacramento, California in March 2018. Charles Roundtree in San Antonio, Texas in October 2018. Javier Ambler in Austin, Texas in March 2019. Elijah McClain in Aurora, Colorado in August 2019. Tatiana Jefferson in Fort Worth, Texas in October 2019. Botham John in Dallas, Texas in October 2019. Ahmaud Arbery in Glenn County, Georgia in February 2020. Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky in March 2020. George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota in May 2020. Rayshard Brooks in Atlanta, Georgia in June 2020. And for Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin in August 2020, who remains in the hospital right now. As a Black man living with a certain level of fear and disappointment has always been present in my mental state. Recently, I have been processing through additional emotions, increasing frustrations, and human thoughts of anger. With so many horrific and blatantly racist incidents, the lived experiences of people of color are both physically exhausting and mentally draining. Often they are violent and at times deadly. As a human, I do not have the privilege to disconnect, the stomach to disengage, nor the ability to allow my heart to turn the same beautiful color of my Black skin. I would never attempt to equate the racist lived experiences of my life with anyone who has experienced bias, prejudice, discrimination, violence, or genocide. Yet the root of all incidents previously expressed are the same: hatred. Personally, I've been called to human relations advocacy work for some time now. As the United Communities of San Antonio's president and CEO, I am humbly leading a human rights relations organization that is dedicated to creating safe and inclusive communities while advocating for social justice by promoting understanding and respect among all people through awareness, education, and dialogue that focuses on the multiple manifestations of bullying, exclusion, harassment, hatred, oppression, prejudice, racism, and violence. To assist all in understanding diversity, appreciating cultural differences, and practicing effective cross-cultural interactions. That is why there must be awareness and education, focus and assistance, verification of your individual understanding, and subsequent confirmation of your status. There is no wrong answer, only truth for you. So, are you, number one, an apathetically interested person. Number 2, a committed non-racist person. Number 3, an engaged, active stakeholder, anti-racist person. Or number 4, a person who is not a member of a marginalized or mistreated group, but who expresses or gives support to that group in an ongoing effort, activity, or struggle. Again, there is no wrong answer. However, if you answered number 4, then it is safe to say that you agree with the following. For those who are marginalized, inequality must be acknowledged, and both historical and current racial and discriminatory actions must be admitted. The goal must be for all minorities to truly be respected by all, treated as equals, included as their lives matter too, and recognized as worthy and valuable individuals of the human race. Remember, I said there is no wrong answer, only truth for you. However, it is not about the truth of the matter, but the truth of my Black life matters, which comes down to this. Unequivocally and with resolve, racism is indeed a public health crisis. Equity is ethical and moral. Equality is noble and necessary. Interest, commitment, and engagement are no longer enough from non-Black individuals. To be conduits for and agents of change for equality, equity, reconciliation, and justice, I need living examples of people who don't talk about it, but be about it. I need people who are not members of a marginalized or mistreated group, but who expresses or gives support to that group in an ongoing effort, activity, or struggle, which is the definition of an ally. So respectfully, I ask you the original question once again. Are you my ally? In unity, Herbert Nance. Thank you.